I notice that my phone is vibrating against the wooden nightstand, the familiar buzz cutting through the peaceful quiet of my Saturday morning. The caller ID shows Mom's name, and my heart does that little skip it always does when she calls unexpectedly. I slide my finger across the screen and press the cool glass to my ear, already smiling before I hear her voice. But the voice that greets me isn't the warm, melodic tone I'm expecting. Instead, it's thin and trembling, each word seeming to cost her enormous effort. The change hits me like cold water, washing away any remnants of sleepiness from my body. Mom's breathing sounds labored, each inhale followed by a soft, pained exhale that makes my chest tighten with worry. I can hear the rustle of bedsheets in the background, and what sounds like the distant hum of medical equipment, though I can't be sure. The acoustics are different too, as if she's speaking from somewhere with tile walls and sterile air. She tells me she's been diagnosed with something serious, something that makes the words catch in her throat as she says them. The medical terms sound foreign and frightening rolling off her tongue, each syllable heavy with implications I don't want to understand. She explains that the doctors have given her a timeline, a countdown that makes my hands shake as I grip the phone tighter. The morning light streaming through my bedroom window suddenly feels too bright, too cheerful for this conversation. I close my eyes and focus entirely on her voice, trying to read between the lines, searching for some hint that this might be a mistake, a misunderstanding that will resolve itself with a second opinion or better test results. But Mom's voice carries a finality that settles in my stomach like a stone. She's always been direct, never one to sugarcoat difficult truths, and that honesty has always been something I respected about her. Now, though, I find myself wishing she would soften the edges, give me some false hope to cling to. She asks me not to tell my siblings yet, says she wants to handle this her own way, in her own time. The request surprises me because Mom has never been secretive about anything, especially not something this important. Our family has always operated on the principle of radical honesty, sharing everything from minor disappointments to major life changes. I agree to keep her confidence, though every fiber of my being screams that this is wrong, that my brother David and sister Sarah deserve to know what's happening. Still, I respect Mom's wishes, telling myself that she must have good reasons for wanting privacy, that maybe she needs time to process this herself before dealing with everyone else's emotions. Over the following weeks, I become Mom's primary contact with the outside world. She calls me regularly with updates about her treatment, her voice growing progressively weaker with each conversation. The medications are making her nauseous, she tells me, and the treatments leave her exhausted for days afterward. I offer repeatedly to visit, to drive the 4 hours to her house and help with whatever she needs, but she always declines. She says she doesn't want me to see her this way, that she'd rather I remember her as she was before the illness took hold. The words break my heart, but I understand her pride, her desire to maintain some dignity in the face of such devastating circumstances. David and Sarah both mentioned to me during our regular family phone calls that Mom seems distant lately, less available for their usual conversations. I deflect their concerns as best I can, suggesting that maybe she's just busy with her garden or her volunteer work at the local library. The lies taste bitter on my tongue, but I've given Mom my word, and I won't break that promise. As autumn arrives, Mom's condition appears to worsen dramatically. Her voice on our phone calls becomes barely a whisper, punctuated by long coughing fits that leave me feeling helpless on the other end of the line. She tells me that she's been thinking about her legacy, about what she wants to leave behind for her children. The conversation takes an unexpected turn when she mentions her will, saying that she's been reconsidering some of her earlier decisions. The way she phrases it makes my pulse quicken with unease, though I can't pinpoint exactly why. She's always been fair in her treatment of the three of us, dividing her attention and resources equally throughout our lives. Mom explains that she's realized how much our relationship has deepened during this difficult time, how much it means to her that I've been there for her when she needed someone most. My siblings, she says with obvious pain in her voice, have been too caught up in their own lives to really understand what she's going through. I try to protest, to explain that David and Sarah don't know about her illness, but she cuts me off with a weak laugh that turns into another coughing fit. When she recovers, she tells me that their ignorance is exactly the point, that their lack of attention to her recent changes in behavior reveals their true priorities. The conversation leaves me feeling deeply uncomfortable, though I can't articulate exactly why. Something about the way Mom spoke about my siblings doesn't sit right with me, doesn't match the woman who raised us to look out for each other above all else. Over the next several weeks, Mom begins dropping hints about changes she's making to her estate planning. She mentions meeting with lawyers and financial advisors, updating documents that haven't been touched in years. Each time she brings up these topics, she emphasizes how grateful she is for my support, how much more I've meant to her during this crisis than she ever expected. The praise should feel good, should validate the countless hours I've spent worrying about her, the sleep I've lost wondering if each phone call might be our last. Instead, it sits uneasily in my stomach, creating a gnawing anxiety that follows me through my daily routines. I start having vivid dreams about my childhood, memories of Mom teaching all three of us to ride bicycles in the driveway behind our house, the pavement warm under our knees when we scraped them learning to balance. I remember how she never played favorites, how she celebrated each of our achievements with equal enthusiasm, from David's high school football victories to Sarah's college graduation to my own wedding day. Those memories feel incompatible with the woman I'm talking to now, the one who seems to be drawing lines between her children based on their recent availability during a crisis they don't even know exists. The disconnect troubles my sleep and makes me question whether I'm really understanding what Mom is trying to tell me. Winter arrives early and harsh, with temperatures dropping well below normal and snow falling in heavy, wet flakes that cling to everything they touch. Mom's health seems to deteriorate in tandem with the weather, her voice becoming so weak during our phone calls that I have to press the speaker close to my ear to make out her words. She tells me that she's updated her will, that the new version reflects her current understanding of which relationships truly matter. The phrasing is odd, more formal than Mom's usual conversational style, and I find myself wondering if the medications are affecting her thought patterns or her ability to express herself clearly. When I ask for more specifics about what she's changed, Mom becomes evasive, saying only that she's made sure the people who have shown her love during this difficult time will be properly recognized. The implication is clear, though she never states it directly, and I feel sick thinking about what this might mean for David and Sarah. I begin to suspect that Mom has decided to leave the bulk of her estate to me, cutting out my siblings based on their absence during her illness. The possibility fills me with dread rather than gratitude, because I know how devastating such a decision would be to our family relationships. David and Sarah both have families of their own now, with mortgages and college funds to worry about. David's youngest daughter has been struggling with learning disabilities that require expensive private tutoring, while Sarah's husband recently lost his job and they've been living on her teacher's salary alone. More importantly, though, I know that neither of my siblings would intentionally neglect Mom if they understood what was happening. They're both caring, responsible people who have always taken their family obligations seriously. Their absence isn't a reflection of their love for Mom, but simply a result of not knowing she needs them right now. The weight of this secret grows heavier with each passing day. I find myself snapping at my husband over trivial things, unable to concentrate at work, lying awake at night staring at the ceiling while my mind races with worst-case scenarios about what will happen when Mom's will is eventually read. I consider breaking my promise and telling my siblings about Mom's condition, but each time I reach for the phone to call them, I remember the trust in Mom's voice when she asked me to keep this between us. She's dying, possibly in pain, definitely scared and alone, and I can't bring myself to violate her wishes during what might be her final months. Spring arrives with unusual warmth, melting the last of winter snow and coaxing early flowers from the ground around my house. Mom's voice on our phone calls sounds a bit stronger, and I allow myself to hope that maybe the worst has passed, that perhaps the doctors were overly pessimistic in their initial prognosis. She mentions feeling well enough to spend time in her garden again, though she describes her activities in vague terms that make it hard to picture exactly what she's doing. When I offer again to visit, to help with the heavier gardening tasks, she still declines, saying that she's managing fine on her own. The contradiction between her apparent improvement and her continued insistence on isolation puzzles me, but I attribute it to the unpredictable nature of her illness. Cancer treatments, I've read, can cause good days and bad days with little warning, and perhaps Mom simply wants to maintain her independence while she's still able. Our conversations during this period take on a different tone, less focused on her immediate symptoms and more concerned with philosophical questions about life and legacy. Mom talks about the importance of recognizing who truly cares about you, about not taking family relationships for granted just because they're expected to endure regardless of effort. These discussions make me increasingly uncomfortable because they seem designed to justify decisions I suspect she's already made. I want to argue that love isn't always expressed through constant contact, that David and Sarah show their care in different ways, but Mom's fragile health makes me reluctant to cause any additional stress or conflict. As summer approaches, Mom surprises me by announcing that she's feeling well enough to host a small family gathering for the 4th of July. The invitation catches me off guard because she's spent months avoiding any suggestion of in-person visits, claiming that she's too weak and doesn't want anyone to see her in her current condition. When I express surprise at her sudden willingness to have company, Mom explains that she's realized how important it is to spend time with the people who matter most while she still can. She wants to see all of her children together one more time, to create a final memory that will sustain her through whatever comes next. The emotion in her voice when she describes this plan is unmistakable, and I find myself crying as we talk about the details. She wants to cook all of our childhood favorites, to recreate the Independence Day celebrations we enjoyed when we were young and the family felt invincible. I agree enthusiastically to the gathering, already planning to bring ingredients to help with the cooking and decorations to make the house feel festive. For the first time in months, I feel genuinely hopeful about Mom's condition and our family's future. When I call David and Sarah to tell them about Mom's invitation, their excitement matches my own. Both of them comment on how much they've missed spending time with her lately, how busy their lives have become, how grateful they are that she's feeling well enough to host a party. Neither of them mentions noticing anything concerning about Mom's recent behavior, which confirms my suspicion that she's been hiding her illness effectively from everyone except me. The deception troubles me, but I remind myself that it was her choice to handle things this way, and now that she's feeling better, perhaps the truth will matter less. The July 4th gathering exceeds all of our expectations. Mom seems almost like her old self, moving around the kitchen with familiar energy, laughing at David's terrible jokes, listening intently to Sarah's stories about her students. The house smells like the comfort foods of our childhood, potato salad and grilled hamburgers and Mom's famous apple pie. Watching my family together, seeing the easy affection between Mom and my siblings, I begin to question whether I'd misunderstood her intentions regarding the will. Maybe her earlier comments were influenced by pain medications or depression, conditions that might have distorted her thinking temporarily. David brings his guitar and plays some of the old songs we used to sing during car trips, his voice still as clear and strong as it was in high school. Sarah contributes her artistic talents by creating elaborate table decorations from flowers and branches she gathers from Mom's garden. The creativity and care they both put into making the day special seems to genuinely touch Mom. As evening approaches and we settle on the back porch to watch the neighborhood fireworks, Mom takes each of our hands in turn, telling us how much she loves us, how proud she is of the adults we become. Her voice is strong and clear, without the breathless quality that characterized our phone conversations for so many months. The gathering ends with promises to get together more often, to not let so much time pass between visits. David and Sarah both hug Mom extra tightly before leaving, as if sensing something fragile about the moment that they can't quite name. After my siblings drive away, I linger to help Mom clean up. As we work together in the kitchen, washing dishes and putting away leftovers, she seems almost euphoric, commenting repeatedly on how wonderful it was to have everyone together again. I mention how much healthier she seems compared to our recent phone conversations, and Mom's expression shifts slightly, becoming more guarded. She explains that she's having one of her better days, that the illness comes in waves that are difficult to predict. When I press gently for more details about her current treatment plan, Mom becomes vague again, mentioning adjustments to medications and changes in her schedule that she describes in general terms. Something about her evasiveness feels different now, less like the fatigue of someone managing a serious illness and more like deliberate misdirection. That night, driving home in the darkness, I replay the day's events in my mind. Mom's energy and apparent good health contrast sharply with the picture of decline she's painted during our private conversations. Either she's having a remarkable temporary improvement, or something else is happening that I don't understand. Over the following weeks, our phone calls resumed their previous pattern, with Mom sounding weak and tired, though perhaps not quite as fragile as before the family gathering. She mentions having tests done and adjustments to her treatment, but the details remain frustratingly vague. When I ask about specific doctors or hospitals, Mom deflects, saying that she doesn't want to worry me with medical terminology I wouldn't understand anyway. The response feels condescending in a way that doesn't match her usual straightforward communication style. I begin to notice other inconsistencies in her stories. She mentions being too tired to cook for herself, then refers to elaborate meals she's prepared for neighbors who've been checking on her. She describes being homebound due to weakness, then casually mentions errands she's run or appointments she's attended. Each contradiction is small enough to dismiss individually, explainable by the unpredictable nature of chronic illness or the confusion that medications can cause. Taken together, though, they create a pattern that makes me increasingly uncomfortable. Late summer brings news that Mom has decided to move forward with finalizing her estate planning while she's still mentally sharp enough to make clear decisions. She schedules meetings with lawyers and financial advisors, appointments that she describes as emotionally draining but necessary. The language she uses to discuss these preparations has become more formal and distant, as if she's describing someone else's situation rather than her own. She talks about ensuring that her assets are distributed according to her true wishes, about making sure that people who have demonstrated genuine care are properly recognized. I realize that I've been dreading these conversations for months, that each mention of her will make my chest tighten with anxiety. The implications of her earlier comments have been growing clearer, and I'm increasingly certain that she intends to disinherit David and Sarah based on their absence during her illness. The unfairness of such a decision weighs heavily on me, especially knowing that their absence has been entirely innocent. They've been living their lives normally, unaware that Mom needed extra attention or support, while I've been privileged with information that has allowed me to be more present. I consider, once again, breaking my promise and telling my siblings about Mom's condition. But each time I imagine that conversation, I picture their shock and hurt at learning that I've kept such important information from them for months. The damage to our relationships might be irreparable, especially if Mom's condition has been less serious than she's led me to believe. Early autumn brings an unexpected phone call from Sarah. Her voice sounds strained and confused as she tells me about a strange conversation she had with one of Mom's neighbors, Mrs. Patterson, who lives in the house directly across the street. Sarah had called Mrs. Patterson to ask about Mom's health, prompted by a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right with our mother's recent behavior. Mrs. Patterson's response had been puzzling, expressing surprise that any of us thought Mom was unwell. According to Mrs. Patterson, Mom has seemed perfectly healthy all year, spending long hours working in her garden, hosting book club meetings in her living room, even taking weekend trips to visit friends in neighboring towns. The description doesn't match the picture of decline and isolation that Mom has painted during our phone conversations. Sarah asks if I know anything about Mom's health that might explain the disconnect between Mrs. Patterson's observations and her own growing concerns. The direct question forces me to confront the promise I made months ago, and for the first time, I seriously consider breaking Mom's confidence. I tell Sarah that I'll call Mom and try to get some clarity about the situation, promising to share whatever information I learn. The commitment feels both necessary and terrifying, because I suspect that the truth, whatever it is, will fundamentally change our family dynamics. When I call Mom that evening, I approach the topic carefully, mentioning Sarah's conversation with Mrs. Patterson and asking for clarification about her current health status. Mom's response is immediate and defensive, her voice taking on a sharp edge that I haven't heard since we were children and one of us had challenged her authority. She accuses Mrs. Patterson of being a busybody who doesn't understand the complexities of chronic illness, claiming that her condition fluctuates dramatically from day to day. The explanation is reasonable on its surface, but Mom's tone suggests anger rather than the patience of someone clarifying a misunderstanding. When I gently press for more details about her medical team or current treatments, Mom's answers become increasingly evasive. She mentions doctors by first names only, describes treatments in vague terms, and deflects most of my specific questions with complaints about medical privacy or her exhaustion. The conversation leaves me more confused than ever, but also more determined to understand what's really happening. That night, I lie awake listening to my husband's steady breathing beside me, trying to make sense of the contradictions and inconsistencies that have been accumulating for months. By morning, I've made a decision that feels both inevitable and terrifying. I'm going to drive to Mom's house unannounced, something I've never done in my adult life, to see for myself what condition she's actually in. The 4-hour drive gives me plenty of time to rehearse different scenarios in my mind. If Mom is truly as ill as she's claimed, I'll feel terrible for doubting her and can focus on providing whatever support she needs. If she's been exaggerating her condition, I'll need to understand why and figure out how to address the implications for our family. As I turn onto Mom's street, my heart pounds with nervous anticipation. The neighborhood looks exactly as I remember it, well-maintained houses with mature trees and carefully tended gardens. Mom's house sits at the end of a cul-de-sac, its white shutters and red door as welcoming as they've always been. What I see when I pull into the driveway, however, stops me cold. Mom is kneeling in her front flower bed, wearing gardening gloves and a sun hat, methodically weeding around a display of late-blooming chrysanthemums. Her movements are steady and sure, without any hint of the frailty she's described during our recent phone conversations. As I sit in my car watching her work, Mom looks up and notices my vehicle. The expression that crosses her face isn't surprise or pleasure, but something closer to panic. She scrambles to her feet with more agility than I've expected, brushing dirt from her knees and pulling off her gardening gloves. By the time I've gathered my courage to get out of the car, Mom has composed herself, pasting on a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. She approaches me with arms outstretched for a hug, but her embrace feels stiff and uncertain, like she's not sure what role she's supposed to be playing. I comment on how much better she looks than I expected based on our recent conversations, and Mom's smile falters for just a moment before she recovers. She explains that she's having one of her rare good days, that she felt strong enough to do a little gardening but will probably pay for it later with increased pain and fatigue. Inside the house, I look for signs of serious illness but find none. The refrigerator is well stocked with fresh food, the counters are clean and uncluttered, and there's no evidence of medical equipment or prescription bottles that would suggest ongoing treatment for a serious condition. When I ask to use the bathroom, I take the opportunity to peek into Mom's medicine cabinet, looking for the heavy-duty medications that would accompany cancer treatment. Instead, I find only the usual collection of over-the-counter remedies and vitamins that any healthy person might keep on hand. The discovery fills me with a mixture of relief and growing dread. If Mom isn't seriously ill, then why has she been lying to me for months? And what does this deception mean for the changes she's claimed to have made to her will? When I return to the living room, Mom is sitting stiffly on the edge of her favorite armchair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The natural ease that characterized our family gathering in July has been replaced by an awkward tension that makes every word feel carefully chosen. I decide to address the situation directly, telling Mom that I'm confused by the contradiction between her apparent health and the picture of decline she's painted during our phone conversations. Her response is immediate and defensive, her voice rising as she insists that I don't understand the nature of her condition. As the conversation continues, Mom's explanations become increasingly elaborate and contradictory. She describes symptoms that come and go without warning, treatments that are too complex for me to understand, and doctors who prefer to keep details confidential for reasons she can't explain. The more she talks, the clearer it becomes that she's been lying to me, though I still can't understand why. The realization hits me like a physical blow, making my chest tight and my hands shake with a combination of anger and heartbreak. When I confront Mom directly about her deception, asking her to tell me the truth about her health, her composure finally cracks completely. Tears begin streaming down her cheeks as she admits that she's not dying, that there is no cancer, that the entire story has been an elaborate fabrication. The confession leaves me speechless for several long moments. I stare at this woman who raised me, who taught me the importance of honesty and integrity, trying to reconcile the values she instilled in me with the months of lies she's been telling. When I finally find my voice, the question that emerges is simple but devastating: why? Why would she put me through months of worry and grief? Why would she lie about something so serious and frightening? Mom's explanation, when it comes, is halting and confused, a rambling justification that reveals the depth of her manipulation. She talks about feeling ignored by David and Sarah, about wanting to see which of her children truly cared about her, about testing our love in a way that would reveal our true priorities. The rationalization makes me feel sick to my stomach. The idea that she would use the threat of death as a tool to manipulate her children's behavior seems so fundamentally wrong that I can barely process it. As Mom continues talking, the full scope of her deception becomes clear. She's been planning this charade for months, carefully crafting a story that would position me as the devoted daughter while painting David and Sarah as neglectful and selfish. The changes to her will, she admits, are real. She's rewritten the document to leave the bulk of her estate to me, justifying the decision based on the attention I've paid to her during her fake illness. My siblings, who have been living their lives normally because they had no reason to suspect anything was wrong, are being punished for their absence during a crisis that never existed. The cruelty of the plan takes my breath away. Mom has deliberately created a situation designed to damage my relationships with David and Sarah, knowing that they would inevitably discover the truth when her will is eventually read. I think about the months I've spent worrying about her, the sleep I've lost, the stress I've carried, the lies I've told my siblings to protect her privacy. All of it has been for nothing, the result of a manipulation so calculated and heartless that I can barely believe it's real. When I ask Mom what she expected to happen when the truth eventually came out, she becomes defensive again, insisting that her plan would never be discovered. She's convinced herself that David and Sarah will simply accept their disinheritance as deserved, that they'll never question the circumstances or investigate the details. The naivety of this assumption reveals how deeply Mom has lost touch with reality and with the people she claims to love. David and Sarah aren't going to quietly accept being cut out of her will, especially when the justification doesn't match their understanding of their relationship with her. I realized that I have to tell my siblings the truth, that keeping Mom's secret any longer would make me complicit in her deception. The conversation will be devastating for all of us, but they deserve to know what's been happening and to make their own decisions about how to respond. Mom begs me not to reveal what I've learned, insisting that doing so will destroy our family permanently. She promises to reconsider the changes to her will, to find a way to include David and Sarah again, if I'll just keep her secret a little longer. But I can see that she's still thinking tactically, still trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage rather than genuinely recognizing the damage she's done. The promises feel hollow, more lies designed to buy her time to figure out how to salvage her plan. I tell Mom that I need time to process what I've learned, that I can't make any decisions about how to handle the situation while I'm still in shock. The conversation has drained both of us, leaving us staring at each other across a gulf that feels unbridgeable. The drive home passes in a blur of confused emotions. I feel angry at Mom for her deception, heartbroken about the damage to our relationship, and terrified about the conversations I'll need to have with David and Sarah. More than anything, though, I feel grief for the loss of the mother I thought I knew. The woman who taught me to value honesty and fairness, who raised us to treat each other with kindness and respect, seems to have been replaced by someone I don't recognize. That evening, I call David and Sarah and ask them to meet me for dinner the following day. I tell them that I have something important to discuss about Mom, something that can't wait any longer. The dinner conversation is one of the most difficult of my life. I watch their faces change as I tell them about Mom's fake illness, about the months of deception, about the changes to her will that were designed to exclude them from her estate. David's initial reaction is disbelief, insisting that there must be some misunderstanding, that Mom would never do something so cruel and manipulative. Sarah's response is immediate anger, her face flushing red as she processes the implications of what I'm telling them. As the evening progresses, both of them go through the same emotional journey I experienced the day before. Confusion gives way to hurt, hurt transforms into anger, and anger eventually settles into a deep sadness about what this means for our family's future. We talk through the details of Mom's deception, trying to make sense of her motivations and figure out how to respond. None of us wants to cut ties with her permanently, but we're all struggling to understand how we can maintain a relationship with someone who has proven capable of such calculated manipulation. Sarah is particularly hurt by the realization that she's been excluded from Mom's confidence for months, that important family information has been withheld from her based on a test she didn't even know she was taking. The betrayal feels personal and devastating. David focuses on the practical implications of the situation, wondering whether Mom's actions might legally constitute fraud or elder abuse, even though she's the one perpetrating the deception. The financial consequences of her plan could have seriously impacted his family's future. By the end of the evening, we've decided to confront Mom together, to demand a full explanation and an honest accounting of her motivations. We agree that any future relationship with her will depend on her willingness to acknowledge the harm she's caused and take concrete steps to repair the damage. The confrontation takes place the following weekend, with all three of us driving to Mom's house together. The symbolism of our united front isn't lost on any of us, though the solidarity feels born of necessity rather than choice. Mom seems to have been expecting this visit, because she's prepared for our arrival with a table set for four and a pot of coffee brewing in the kitchen. The domestic touches feel grotesquely inappropriate given the circumstances, but they reveal her continued delusion that this situation can be managed and controlled. When we sit down in her living room, the same space where we gathered for 4th of July just a few months earlier, the contrast with that happy occasion is stark and painful. The easy affection that characterized that gathering has been replaced by wariness and hurt that fills the room like smoke. David takes the lead in our confrontation, his voice steady and measured as he asks Mom to explain her actions. His approach is more generous than she deserves, giving her the opportunity to provide context or justification that might help us understand her choices. Mom's response reveals that she still doesn't fully grasp the magnitude of what she's done. She frames her deception as a necessary test, a way of determining which of her children truly loved her enough to be present during a crisis. The circular logic of this justification becomes increasingly apparent as she talks. She created a fake crisis to test our responses, then used our responses to that fake crisis to justify real consequences that would permanently alter our family dynamics. When Sarah points out the unfairness of judging them for their absence during an illness they didn't know existed, Mom becomes defensive, insisting that their failure to notice changes in her behavior revealed their fundamental lack of attention to her well-being. The argument that follows is painful and circular, with Mom seeming genuinely unable to understand why her actions were wrong. She's convinced herself that her deception was justified, that the ends she was pursuing excused the means she employed. As the conversation continues, it becomes clear that Mom has been planning this manipulation for much longer than any of us realized. She mentions feeling overlooked and underappreciated for years, building up resentments that she never expressed directly but allowed to fester until they drove her to this elaborate scheme. The revelation that our mother has been harboring these feelings while maintaining a facade of contentment is almost as shocking as her recent deception. It forces us to question whether we ever really knew her at all, whether the loving relationships we thought we had were as genuine as we believed. When David asks Mom what she expected to achieve with her plan, her answer reveals the depth of her delusion. She genuinely believed that discovering their disinheritance would motivate David and Sarah to be more attentive to her, that the shock would somehow repair relationships that she felt were already damaged. The naivety of this expectation is breathtaking. She couldn't see that her actions would inevitably destroy the very relationship she claimed to want to strengthen, the trust once broken so completely might be impossible to rebuild. As our confrontation draws to a close, Mom makes a series of promises about changing her will back to its original form and seeking counseling to address whatever prompted her to behave this way. The offers feel hollow and calculated, more manipulation designed to minimize consequences rather than genuine contrition. We leave her house that day without resolution, knowing that our relationship with her has been fundamentally altered in ways that can't be easily repaired. The trust that forms the foundation of any healthy family relationship has been shattered, and none of us knows whether it can be rebuilt. In the months that follow, our interactions with Mom become formal and cautious, marked by the knowledge that she's capable of deception and manipulation on a scale we never imagined. Every conversation feels weighted with unspoken questions about her motivations and honesty. Mom does eventually change her will back to its original form, dividing her estate equally among the three of us as she had always planned before her elaborate deception. But the gesture feels empty given the damage that's already been done to our family relationships. The revelation of her fake illness has changed how we see not just her, but each other and ourselves. We question our own perceptions and memories, wondering what else we might have missed or misunderstood over the years. David and Sarah both struggle with feelings of guilt, wondering whether they should have been more attentive to Mom even without knowing she was supposedly ill. The manipulation has achieved exactly what Mom probably hoped it would, making them doubt themselves and their own behavior. I struggle with my own complicity in the deception, knowing that I kept her secret for months while my siblings remained unaware of what was happening. Even though I was manipulated too, I can't shake the feeling that I should have seen through her lies sooner. The incident has taught us all painful lessons about the complexity of family relationships and the damage that can be done when trust is weaponized. We've learned that the people closest to us are capable of betrayals we never imagined possible. Mom occasionally tries to return to the casual intimacy that once characterized our relationships, calling with updates about her garden or invitations to family gatherings. But these attempts at normalcy feel forced and uncomfortable, reminders of what we've lost rather than steps toward healing. The most difficult aspect of the situation is that Mom seems to have convinced herself that her actions were justified, that she was the victim of her children's neglect rather than the architect of an elaborate deception. This refusal to take full responsibility makes genuine reconciliation feel impossible. As time passes, we've all learned to navigate our relationship with Mom within the constraints created by her betrayal. We maintain contact and fulfill our basic obligations as her children, but the deep emotional connection that once defined our family has been irreparably damaged. The experience has changed how I think about family loyalty and the obligations we have to each other. I've learned that love without boundaries can enable destructive behavior, that sometimes protecting ourselves requires disappointing the people we care about most. Looking back on the months of Mom's fake illness, I can see warning signs that I missed at the time, inconsistencies in her story that should have raised red flags earlier. The knowledge that I was susceptible to such manipulation has made me more cautious in all my relationships. The incident has also affected my relationship with David and Sarah, though not in the ways Mom probably intended. While we were initially brought closer together by the shared experience of her betrayal, the ongoing stress of managing our relationship with her has created new tensions between us. We sometimes disagree about how much contact to maintain with Mom, how much forgiveness she deserves, and what our obligations to her are as she ages. These disagreements echo some of the dynamics that Mom exploited in her manipulation, making it hard to discuss the situation objectively. The financial implications of her deception, while ultimately resolved through the restoration of her original will, created months of anxiety and uncertainty that affected all our family planning. The knowledge that our inheritance could be altered capriciously based on Mom's perceptions of our behavior has changed how we think about our financial futures. More broadly, the experience has taught me about the ways that family roles and expectations can become toxic when they're used as tools of manipulation. Mom's position as our mother gave her unique power to hurt us, power that she abused in ways that violated the fundamental trust that makes families function. The aftermath of discovering her deception has been a long process of rebuilding our sense of who we are as individuals and as siblings. We've had to re-examine our childhood memories and adult relationships in light of this new understanding of Mom's capacity for manipulation. Some days I feel angry about the time and emotional energy that her fake illness consumed, the worry and grief that she caused me for no reason other than to satisfy her own need for attention and control. Other days I feel sad about the mother-daughter relationship we lost, the easy intimacy that can never be fully restored. The experience has made me more protective of my own nuclear family, more determined to model healthy communication and conflict resolution for my children. I never want them to experience the kind of betrayal that Mom inflicted on us, either as perpetrators or victims. As I reflect on everything that happened, I realize that Mom's fake illness revealed aspects of her personality that were probably always present but carefully hidden. The capacity for manipulation and deception didn't appear overnight, but was likely developed over years of small compromises and justified betrayals. The most heartbreaking aspect of the situation is that Mom's underlying need for attention and reassurance from her children was probably genuine, even if her method of seeking it was deeply destructive. Had she communicated her feelings directly, we might have been able to address them without causing so much damage. Instead, her elaborate deception created exactly the opposite of what she claimed to want. Rather than bringing us closer to her, it drove us away. Rather than proving our love, it revealed the limits of what that love could endure. Rather than securing her legacy, it tainted it with betrayal and manipulation. The knowledge that she was willing to put us through months of grief and worry for her own purposes has fundamentally changed how I see her. The loving, honest woman who raised me seems to have been replaced by someone I don't recognize, someone capable of cruelty I never imagined possible. Today, several years after the revelation of Mom's deception, our family operates according to new rules and boundaries that acknowledge both our love for each other and our awareness of the potential for manipulation. We maintain relationships, but with a wariness that protects us from further betrayal. Mom has never fully acknowledged the magnitude of what she did to us, though she occasionally makes comments that suggest some level of awareness that her actions were wrong. These half-apologies feel insufficient given the scale of her deception, but they represent the closest thing to accountability we're likely to receive. The experience taught me that forgiveness doesn't always mean returning to the way things were before. Sometimes the healthiest response to betrayal is to maintain love and connection while establishing boundaries that protect against future harm. I've learned to appreciate the relationships in my life that are built on genuine honesty and mutual respect, understanding how precious and fragile such connections can be. The contrast with my relationship with Mom has made me more grateful for the people who choose to love me without conditions or manipulation. The story of Mom's fake illness has become a cautionary tale in our family, a reminder of how quickly trust can be destroyed and how difficult it can be to rebuild. We share it carefully, understanding both its power to hurt and its potential to educate. In quiet moments, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had refused to keep Mom's secret from the beginning, if I had told David and Sarah about her supposed illness despite her wishes. The alternative timeline might have prevented some of the damage to our relationships, though it also might have created different problems. The experience has made me more skeptical of dramatic revelations in crisis situations, more inclined to seek verification before fully committing my emotions and energy. While this wariness protects me from manipulation, it also makes it harder to respond with full empathy when people genuinely need support. As I've grown older and gained perspective on what happened, I've come to understand that Mom's actions revealed deep insecurities and unmet emotional needs that probably developed over many years. While this understanding doesn't excuse her behavior, it helps me maintain some compassion for the woman who raised me. The story continues to evolve as our family navigates the ongoing consequences of her deception. We're all still learning how to balance love with self-protection, how to maintain connection while acknowledging the potential for further betrayal. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like to have the kind of straightforward, honest relationship with Mom that I once took for granted. The fantasy of easy conversation and unconditional trust feels both precious and impossible, a reminder of what was lost and what can never be fully recovered. The experience has shaped how I approach all my relationships, making me more attentive to patterns of manipulation and more committed to direct, honest communication even when it's difficult. I never want to create the kind of confusion and hurt that Mom's deception caused our family. Looking ahead, I know that Mom's aging will bring new challenges and decisions about how much support to provide and what kind of relationship to maintain. These future complications will be navigated within the framework created by her betrayal, with the knowledge that our love for her must be balanced against our need to protect ourselves from further manipulation. The story of nobody imagining what happened when my mom faked an illness to exclude me from the will has become a defining experience for our family, a watershed moment that divided our lives into before and after. While we've found ways to move forward, the scars from her deception continue to shape how we relate to each other and to her.